This video is brought to you by the Standoff, a hobby-focused Warhammer 40k tournament being held on November 18th and 19th. We'll talk more about the Standoff later on in the video. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and if I sound a little bit different today, that is because I'm actually traveling, streaming at the Battle Brothers GT over in North Carolina. I had an amazing time streaming the event. I will drop a link to the live streams down in the video description. We had some pretty good games over the course of the weekend, and we're going to be discussing some of the results of those games in today's installment of the best armies in Warhammer 40k. As always, what we're going to be doing today is talking about undefeated players in GT and major level events from this past weekend, breaking down the amount of representation of certain factions and discussing examples of the winning lists. As always, if you enjoy this style of 40k content, please drop a like in the video, subscribe to the channel, all the YouTube stuff that you hear about all the time, and let's dive in talking about a metagame breakdown. This weekend saw a lot of large GTs and a couple huge events, including one of the largest events of the year over in the UK, the Coventry GT. This large event was split into two smaller events, the 3-day with 150 players and the 2-day with only 100 players. We also saw the Team Battle Brothers Major with 100 players as well. That one did only run 5 rounds, however, which meant it still had 3 undefeated at the end of the weekend. Recordings of those games are available on this channel, so if you want to see how those games played out, you can check out the VODs of that live stream. Now, while the first couple of months of 10th edition 40k were dominated by Aeldari, it looks like we do officially have a new Lord and Savior. Chaos Space Marines have absolutely wrecked this weekend, and not only Chaos Space Marines proper, but also some of the other varieties of Heretic Astartes elsewhere within the game are also doing pretty well. Chaos Space Marines were able to take the top 1 and 2 placings at the Coventry 3-day. The first place was the only undefeated, however, Liam Vissel taking that one down. We also saw them tie for first place at the Warfare 2023 GT and win the Bunker Down GT, Bash at the Beach GT, and San Antonio Shootout, where Georg Bobkov took it down with 500 victory points on his record. Did not drop a single point over the course of the weekend. Absolutely insane. And if you want to catch him live, I'm going to be playing against his Chaos Space Marines with a horrible Tyranid list later on this week. That is on the calendar for Thursday at 10 p.m. US Eastern Time over on the Purple channel. You can find links to that down on my link tree in the video description. Moving on from there, Death Guard also put up an excellent showing this weekend at the Coventry 2-day Peninsula Feasts of Blades, Rumble on the Rivers, and Gravel Pit GTs. 4 events come nipping at the heels of Chaos Space Marines proper. Aeldari also went undefeated at the Coventry 2-day and also at the San Antonio Shootout. Adepta Sororitas coming in with 2 results as well, again at the Coventry 2-day. A lot of undefeated players from there, as well as an X0-1 from the Risky Rollers Open. Moving on from that, we also have Orks with 2 results at the Team Battle Brothers Major and the Great Game GT. Leagues of Votann also putting in 2 results this week at the Ironman 1-day and the Gravel Pit GT. Last but certainly not least, for factions with 2 results this week, Thousand Suns actually make a little bit of an appearance with an undefeated result at the Team Battle Brothers Major and an X0-1 result with 1 draw on their record from Harvester of Souls. Ultramarines with another undefeated result at the Team Battle Brothers Major, Astra Militarum going undefeated at Warfare 2023, and Chaos Knights winning the Game Center Narralon. And from there, we will dive into these lists, starting with Chaos Space Marines and Liam Vissel, a friend of the channel. I've had him on talking about his Chaos lists in interviews in the past. He's also a multiple-time T5S2 qualifier and winner of enormous in-person events, Liam Vissel, who brought a Chaos Lord focused composition to the Coventry 3-day. This list was focused around 3 undivided Chaos Lords who are entering 3 individual units of Chaos Chosen. We have 1 Nurgle Cultist Mob to hold down some objectives, 3 Chaos Rhinos to ferry those chosen around, 3 units of 5 Chaos Chosen, alongside 1 Undivided and 1 Nurgle Forge Fiend, 1 Undivided and 1 Nurgle Obliterator unit, 2 models in each of those Obliterator teams, 1 unit of 5 Warp Talons, and some allies, 2 units of Rubik Marines coming out of Thousand Suns to add a little bit of re-rolling firepower to the army, alongside the Blue Scribes to act as utility units. Pretty standard composition from Chaos Space Marine. We've been seeing different varieties of Chaos Space Marines do pretty well over the course of the edition, but the Chaos Lord and Chosen variety has definitely been coming out as one of the favorites overall. A little bit of a spice in there as well in the allied unit composition, with Rubric Marines adding a pretty solid ranged punch to the army as well. This video was sponsored by the Standoff. If you are one of the many thousands of players who were not lucky enough to be bestowed a golden ticket to the Warhammer World Championships November 18th and 19th, the Standoff is here for you. This is a long-running, ongoing event held this year in Portland, Maine. In the past, the event was a one-day RTT style, but always drew big crowds and had a great showcase for not only great competitive play, community, but also a lot of hobby aspects, including hobby competitions and other satellite events. The event's been absolutely spectacular in the past. I still use some of their prize support as my mouse pad, and I'm excited for them to expand into a multi-day GT style event. The event will consist of a Warhammer 40k 2-day GT as well as hobby competitions, including showcases for armies, individual models, and painted displays. So come down to the Doubletree in Portland, Maine for 2 great days of Warhammer 40k gaming with awesome competition and a special focus on the hobby. There'll be more information and a Best Coast pairings link to the event down in the video description and pinned comment, and I'll see you at the crossroads. Let's move on and talk about the cult-specific Chaos Space Marine sub-factions, starting with Garrett Stacey's win using Death Guard. This was an absolutely wild list focused on a trio of Terminator sorcerers. These are not a widely seen inclusion, but they are included in this list simply as independent combatants. They don't have units to join into, they're just going to be by themselves. But they do offer a lot of interesting tools for the list. Not only are they individual deep strikers, which makes them great for secondaries, they're also difficult to get rid of, at least in melee, since they can use their own psychic power, even if they're not joined into a unit, to reduce incoming damage by 1. That does only work in melee, however, to be fair. On top of that, they also have a once per game ability to improve their strength and damage by 2. Either their Curse of the Leper, which can then overcharge to be firing 2d6 strength 8 AP2 3 damage shots, or their Force Weapon to attack at strength 8 AP1 D3 plus 2 damage. That can mean that these 3 guys, with their powers combined and applying Nurgle's trademark debuffs on a target, can potentially nuke it for a ton of damage, with multiple overcharged Curses of the Leper being fired down range. On top of that, the list also brought Mortarion, a bunch of Plague Marines, 4 units of 5, with 2 Death Guard Rhinos to embark them, 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, and 3 War Dog Brigands. We've been seeing the War Dogs being brought alongside Chaos Space Marines more often, more recently, because they do have the ability to benefit from a lot of their offensive and defensive auras without actually having to have their sub-faction characteristics. They had a lot of much-needed fast objective control and powerful shooting to the army that Death Guard themselves don't often bring in large numbers. Moving on from that, we'll go to another Chaos Space Marine faction, Steven Soroka's Thousand Sons from the Team Battle Brothers Major. If you want to see Steven's army in play, I did stream him in the semifinals game against Chaos Knights, where he got a decisive win. This is a relatively standard composition of Thousand Sons, with a little bit of spice from multiple Exalted Sorcerers on Discs of Tzeentch. These are almost always included as a one-off in Thousand Sons armies. Occasionally, we do see multiples of them in order to add more fast utility to the list and more instances of their slowing Binding Tendrils effect, which can half the movement, advance, and charge rolls of units trying to engage the Thousand Sons army. This list included Ahriman on a disc, as well as those 2 Exalted Sorcerers, one of them with the Lord of Forbidden Lore, to allow him to cast Kabbalistic Rituals that have already been used that phase. That allows him to potentially be double moved up into position and then move himself back out of danger, or even duplicate other offensive effects, things like Doom Bolts, if the army is committing. We then have 3 Infernal Masters, one of them upgraded with Arcane Vortex, the other one with the Umbralific Crystal, alongside Magnus the Red, and a regular Thousand Sun Sorcerer to hold a backline objective and make his unit harder to hit, since he provides them an 18-inch lone operative style of effect. From there, we have 5 units of 5 Rubric Marines, almost all of them equipped with Warp Flamers, 1 unit with 4 Warp Flamers, plus the Aspiring Sorcerer, ostensibly for Ahriman to join into and give them all +1 to wound. There is a Thousand Sons Rhino in the list for that unit to join as well, 2 units of Zangor Enlightened for utility and support, as well as the Blue Scribes for the same reason. We've been seeing a lot of different builds of Thousand Sons, including monster-focused builds that we spoke about on the Tuesday show last week. Please go check that out if you want to hear about an absolutely wild style of Thousand Sons that did pretty well at the Cali Cup. But this one is focused very heavily on its sorcerers and rubric marines, allowing them in the massive numbers of cabal points they generate to support Magnus, with the characters themselves doing the lion's share of damage, both with Kabbalistic rituals like Doombolt and just with their own powerful psychic powers. That moves us on to Aeldari. We'll talk about Alex Petford's list from the Coventry 2-day. This is, I think, for all intents and purposes, a normal Eldar list, generally speaking. This one includes an Outsark Wayleaper with the Phoenix Gem, a Farseer, Fugan the Fire Lord, one Spiritseer with Fate's Messenger to allow his unit to flip a dice to a 6 once per turn, the Incarn, as well as a Troopmaster. We then have a Star Weaver and a unit of Harlequin Troopers for the Troopmaster to embark into, 2 Night Spinners, 1 unit of Shadow Specters, 2 units of Warp Spiders, and 1 unit of Wraithguard for that Spiritseer to join into. Pretty standard Eldar stuff. Not a lot of innovation from the Eldar team this week, but they are still seeing success, obviously, after their weeks and weeks of dominance of the 40k metagame. They may have been ousted so far by Chaos Space Marines. We'll see if that holds too in future weeks, but it doesn't look like their builds are being revised anytime soon. And then moves us on to Adepta Sororitas. Vic VJ took them to a 5-0 result also at the Coventry 2-day. So we're staying with the event. This list included St. Celestine, the Triumph of St. Catherine, a Canoness, as well as a Palatine with the Blade of St. Eleanor to improve her combat stats and allow her to trigger her extra mortal wounds on successful wound effect more often, and a Dialogus. We then had 2 units of Battle Sisters with their complements of Meltaguns, 3 units of 10 Arco-Flagellants because of their efficient damage output, especially against low armor save models. They are AP 0, but with Sustain 1 and Twin Linked, they can force a lot of saving throws on most targets outside of extremely high toughness targets, and they're also difficult to kill for just 13 points a model. You get 2 wounds and a 4+ feel no pain, which is incredibly difficult to get through. We have 2 units of 2 Crusaders and a unit of Seraphim to act as utility, 1 Castigator with a Battle Cannon, 3 Exorcists to add indirect fire, and 1 Immolator and 2 Rhinos. The Rhinos are good to embark the Arco-Flagellants into, and we can use the Immolator to split one of the Battle Sister squads into 2. By joining a Dialogus into one of the Battle Sister squads that is split in half in this way, we can potentially sit them next to the Triumph of St. Catherine, use its ability to use multiple fate dice on that unit, and the Dialogus' ability to turn all those fate dice into 6s to convert massive amounts of damage from their Multiguns and Multi-Meltas. Not to mention the fact that the combat squad of that Battle Sister squad that embarks into the Immolator has a huge buff thanks to the Immolator's fire support, giving it wound rerolls, which can definitely help Sisters get over the hump of high toughness enemies. Armies like these are incredibly good at scoring both primary and secondary points. They can put a lot of pressure on their opponent with the Exorcists, and are while they do sometimes lack a little bit of damage output, that isn't quite so much of a problem if you can control the battlefield and score your objectives very consistently. Leagues of Votann also saw a little bit of success with George Elton taking them to the Iron Man 1-day. George was running a Brokir Ironmaster alongside 2 Einhir champions, a Grimnir, and a Call with Appraising Gaze. We then had 1 unit of Hearthkin Warriors, 3 Sagittors, alongside 2 units of Einhir Hearthguard, 1 with Plasma Guns and 1 with Disintegrators, 1 Hekaton Land Fortress, 2 units of Hernkin Pioneers, and 2 units of Brokir Thunderkin, 1 of 3 to enter into the Land Fortress, and 1 of 6 that can strategic reserve off the side of the table. The 3 Sagittors is interesting because the Hearthkin Warriors can only take up 2 of them, but one piece of technology that's becoming more and more common within Leagues of Votann is to take Grimnirs as an objective holding unit. They have a lot of wounds and a 4+ invulnerable save and some solid ranged attacks for only 65 points, and don't require you to pay an extra 110 for a unit of Hearthkin or another expensive combat unit. That moves us on to the last faction that saw 2 undefeated results this week, Orks, where Justin Roscoe took them to a 5-0 result at the Battle Brothers Major. And again, I'm going to shout it out one more time. I did stream some of Justin's games, including his finals game against Eldar, if you want to check those out over on the stream VOD. Justin was playing a list focused very heavily on dealing as many devastating wounds as he could. He had 2 beast bosses, which have devastating wounds baked in on their profile, plus a Nob on Smash-a-Squig with Headwappa's Kill Choppa to give its melee attacks devastating wounds. On top of that, he then also gains anti-monster and anti-vehicle on the Wa turn, giving him pretty good options to deal those devastating damage against monsters and vehicles. We had 1 regular war boss, 1 weird boy, and a war boss in mega armor with Follow Me Lads to improve the movement of his mega knobs. We had 2 units of Beast Snagga Boys for those beast bosses to join into, 4 units of trucks to deliver them to the table, alongside 1 battle wagon, 2 units of Gretchen, 1 unit of 5 Mega Knobs for that Mega Armor War Boss to join into. Those guys also get devastating wounds on the Wa turn, so we are all in on calling the Wa and just trying to full army engage everything in your opponent's army and do absolutely insane, unsavable damage from all of these anti-monster, anti-vehicle, devastating wounds attacks. Obviously, the Mega Knobs themselves aren't anti-monster or vehicle, but they do have a lot of attacks that could potentially be triggering that devastating. 1 unit of Knobs to join the War Boss into, alongside 2 units of Squig Hog Boys, 2 units of Storm Boys, and 1 unit of War Bikers to add some utility. Ultramarines also saw success at the Battle Brothers Major, with Mark Hurdle going 5-0 with his Ultramarines list for the 2nd week in a row. We talked about Mark's list in last week's episode, running multiple Land Raiders in an Ultramarines Gladius task force, but we'll talk about it again this week as well. His list was running an Apothecary Biologus with Fire Discipline, a Lieutenant with Combi Weapon in Artificer Armor alongside Marnius Calgar. It had 1 Aggressor Squad for the Apothecary Biologus to enter into to give them the lethal hits plus Storm of Fire and Fire Discipline combo to give them +1 AP, Ignore Cover, Exploding 5s in Devastator Doctrine, and Auto Wounding 5s as well, allowing this unit to do absolutely ridiculous damage against most targets. We also had a Blade Guard Veteran Squad that's largely for Marnius Calgar to join into to give the army a little bit of combat punch, a Centurion Devastator Squad with Grav Cannons, 2 Inceptor Squads, both with Assault Bolters, 1 Standard Land Raider with Godhammer Las Cannons, and 2 Land Raider Redeemers, and 1 Calidus Assassin to operate as support. The army's mostly focused on those 3 big Land Raiders, 1 of them carrying Blade Guard, 1 of them carrying Aggressors, and 1 of them carrying Centurion Devastators. It has tools to fight a wide variety of matchups and enough utility with the Inceptors and the Calidus Assassin to score most of its secondaries very easily. Overall, an incredibly straightforward and incredibly effective list. Astra Militarum also took first place at Warfare 2023 with a 4-0-1 record, 1 draw on the record, but that is because Martin Cooper, the pilot of this list, actually drew to the other player who went undefeated at the event, but not in the finals. They drew earlier on in the day and then just won all their other games. So the event had 2 4-0-1s that were tying for first place that then went down to tiebreakers. This was an Astra Militarum list featuring Gaunt's Ghosts, Lord Solar Leontis, plus a standard command squad, a tank commander, and Ursula Creed. It was very battle line focused, with 1 unit of Kydian Shock Troopers, 3 units of Catachan Jungle Fighters, and 2 units of Death Corps, alongside a big Kazarkan squad, 3 Medusa Carriage Batteries, 1 Rogaldorn Battle Tank, a unit of Tempestus Scions to deep strike and do some utility, and a Calidus Assassin for the same reason. So we have a lot of shooting power between the powerful indirect from the Medusa Carriage Batteries and the shooting from the Rogaldorn and Tank Commander. That's backed up by an immense number of scouting high OC units from the Catachan Jungle Fighters and the Kazarkan. The Death Corps of Krieg and Kydian Shock Troops can also add some objectives secured and more resilient OC2 units to hold down the midboard. Now, last but not least, that moves us on to Chaos Knights, one of the other Chaos sub-factions we haven't yet discussed, who took first place at the Game Center Narrowland GT. This was a relatively standard Chaos Knights build. We're going to be running a lot of War Dogs today, so all you Big Knight fans, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait your turn for the next iteration of the index. We're running 1 War Dog Stalker with Aura of Terror, 5 War Dog Brigands, and 5 War Dog Carnivores, alongside a bunch of allied demons. 4 units of Nurglings, Celeste, the Slaanesh character, who makes an excellent lone, not operative, but operator, I guess. They don't necessarily need a unit to go with. They're just good by themselves because they can deep strike, respawn themselves when they die, and have pretty good shooting and melee attacks, alongside the Blue Scribes to add an actual lone operative. Pretty standard stuff from Chaos Knights, but it is cool to see the Chaos Demon inclusions. And with that, those are all of the lists from the event this weekend. Let me know down in the comment section which one is your favorite, and thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. Thanks as well to the Standoff for sponsoring this video. Go check them out if you have a free weekend. Next weekend, they're going to be running an amazing event. Thanks as well to everybody who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are great, and I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.